So last week we kind of gathered up in a big circle at the other building and prayed over it, and I was a mess, a royal, emotional mess. Anybody remember that? Yeah, good. Don't remember that part. But we talked about it a little bit in staff meeting, and there was lots of speculation, well, maybe because my dad did so much work in that other building, it was hard to leave because of that. And that was part of it, but I felt like a lot of that grieving had come before. And so maybe just because we're losing the place, maybe this, that, or the other thing, and there was just a lot of speculation. And what I realized from that, in that moment, last Sunday as we gathered as a family, church family, praying and thanking God for that, is what really struck me about that building, what I was so emotional about that building, was looking back and seeing how God had really shown up for us as a church again and again and again. And again. And I did not see it there. I didn't see it during that time. I didn't see it. I didn't. In fact, I was angry. I was angry at God for all that was going on in that space. That building was a pain in the butt. I mean, just from start to finish, it was a pain in the butt. Even getting into the building was a pain. It was like walking through thick, thick mud. Every day. Anybody ever done that? I mean, every step is a challenge. And it was really, really hard, and I was angry, and it didn't grow the way that I hoped that it would. I mean, 36,000 square foot building for a pastor, that's like a dream come true. It's being paid some other way, so you don't have to worry about a building payment. We had enough room in that auditorium to fit 300 people probably. I don't know. We never did. So I don't know how many people we could have gotten there. I know how many people we can get in here, though. About this many, right? So we're going to count you before you leave. Anyway, so I was pretty frustrated with the whole thing. And that's not a good place for a pastor to be. Frustrated, angry, calling out to God, going, God, come on. I need your help. Uh-oh. So, I'll just keep talking as this powers back up. Listen, it's a learning curve. Did I tell you about the projector that Jeff's going to install for us? That way we've got words up here? Okay. Well, here's what really struck me coming out of that Sunday and leading up to that Sunday, coming out of that building was, God kind of does these things on purpose. And what, kind of what he does is just, and it's weird, and I don't always like it, but he lets us experience these hard and difficult times. Because in the hard and difficult times, it's easy to call out and depend on God. Right? I mean, in the midst of all of that stuff, there wasn't a day that went by that I wouldn't say, God, listen, if you don't do something here, we're not going to be able to stay here. We're not going to be able to survive as a church. And guys, I had those prayers often in that building. Often. If you're not in this, God, we can't do it. And so in those hard times, the harder it got, the more I would call out to God. And there were times when I was like, God, are you trying to tell me to quit? Is this done here? How is this? And he said, no, keep going, keep going, keep going. And he kept providing. So in the hard times, it's really easy to call out and depend on God, isn't it? But in the good times, it's harder to call out and depend on God, and he knows that. Because in those good times, when things are going great, you're like, hey, look at it, who needs God? Who needs him? Things are good. And so we need to, as a church, we need to make sure that we understand clearly how important it is not to forget those hard times. Because the hard times, when it's easy to call out on God and to depend on him for everything, they're there for a purpose. And in the easy times, when it's harder to call out on God and depend on him for everything, we've got to stay vigilant. So here's the thing. The Bible contains all kinds of great information about all kinds of things, and we can look at a lot of examples from the Bible to see what God's trying to explain to us through his people. And a couple of weeks ago, as we were moving in, out of our house and into this one, and the residence parts of this houses, and just thinking about everything that was going on with that old building and this new building and everything, God really, in my personal time with God. He showed me Deuteronomy chapter 8. And all of you are like, Deuteronomy? Really? Chapter 8? Go ahead and turn there, because I think he's got some great words for us as a church there. And as Moses is explaining to the Israelites who are about to leave their wilderness, their difficulty, their hard times experience, and move into the promised land, which was going to be super easy and super great, this huge blessing from God, Moses said, you need to make sure that you do not forget me in the easy times. And he is telling them some things I think that we need to learn, and that God was just really putting on my heart. So, hopefully, the computers are back up. No, the verses. Deuteronomy chapter 8. There we go. Deuteronomy chapter 8. Again, we're all trying new things out, okay? So, bear with us just a little bit. Deuteronomy chapter 8. This is what Moses is telling the Israelites right before they move into the promised land. The land that was flowing with milk and honey, which was a symbol for everything was good. They were moving into houses that were already built. They were moving into fields that were already planted. The crops were ready to go. They didn't have to do much at all except for conquer the people, which was a little scary for them at that time. But here we go. Deuteronomy chapter 8. Moses says, be careful to follow every command that I am giving you today, so that you may live and increase, and that you may enter and possess the land the Lord promised on oath to your ancestors. This promise predates all of them. Remember, they wandered in the wilderness for over 40 years, so that one generation could pass away, and a new generation that had more faith in God could rise up. But the promise that they would enter this land came generations before. Verse 2, remember, he said, don't forget, remember these things. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness those 40 years. And here's what's interesting about the wilderness. They didn't have a choice. They just followed God. They got out of the middle of the desert and these wilderness experiences, and they had no other option. You ever been in a situation like that? You should get in one. You should. It's scary as all get out, and it's hard. It's not easy. I mean, they wandered and wandered, lived in a tent for... Graziosis can understand that. They're waiting for their house to close on. They're living in their camper, right? Right now, it's no fun, is it? But imagine doing that for 40 years, right? They did it for 40 years. They had to set up a tent, take it down, and move and wander, and you've got all your household goods that have to be strapped on some animal's back and carried along the way. For 40 years, they did that. And they had no choice, because God said, follow me, and they did. But in that moment, they learned to depend on God more than anything else. And here's the thing, when I prayed prayers years and years and years ago, be careful what you pray for, right? And I said, God, I want to be a part of something that you're a part of, so much so that if you're not a part of it, it doesn't exist. Well, guess what? This church is just that. Because there was no way that we could be where we are today if he hadn't been involved in it from day one and let us all know. Was the wilderness easy? No. Did I want to quit? Yes. Did I expect at any moment somebody to come show up at the front doors of that building and say, you guys are finished here? Yeah, there were times when I really did. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. Let's keep going here. But in the wilderness, they had no choice. God led you in the wilderness. Why? You know, Josh makes really good coffee. It's over here. So if y'all need to wake up a little bit more before we start these studies together so that you're on it. Look, all of those pictures are full of really good coffee. Okay? Yeah, because we want our worship to be hopping here. All right? And we want your minds to be sharp. Where did he lead them for 40 years? Why did he lead them in the wilderness for 40 years? And what else? What's that? What's that other word? This one right here. Oh, man, I hate that word. Don't you hate that word? Who likes to be humbled? Who likes to be humbled? But you know what? God loves humble hearts. Why? Because they're dependent on him. And God says, I deserve all of you. And I want you to depend on me. Isn't that amazing? I mean, all of our lives, Lily and Abby, this includes you too, okay? As we grow up, what are we taught? We're taught to be independent. We're taught to be able to buy your own health insurance. Looking at my kids in the back row there right now, right, guys? Taylor's like, I got one. Pay for your own cell phone bill. You know, we raise them up to be independent, but what does God say? God says, I want you to depend on me for everything. And that's why he led them in the wilderness, so that they would depend on him for everything. He wants to be your sugar daddy. I mean, it sounds a little weird, doesn't it? But he wants you to know that he can meet all of your needs. So much so that he says to his chosen people, walk with me through the wilderness. Let me show you how. He said, I'm doing this to humble you, and I'm doing this to test you. Who likes to be tested? Yeah, I don't really like tests either. But this test is important, because this test shows us a couple of things. Are we going to trust God? Are we going to take God at his word? Are we going to have any spiritual characteristics inside of our lives or not? That's what these tests are designed to do. They're designed to show our character to him. Here's what the rest of the verse says. It says, to humble and test you in order to know what is in your heart and whether or not you would keep his commands. When the going gets really tough, where do we go? Do we trust God? Do we trust God, or do we grumble against him? Because I'll tell you what, no matter how good your life is, it could be perfect, whatever perfect is and looks like, whatever perfect is or looks like, we can find a way to complain about it, can't we? I mean, if it's 74 degrees and sunny every day, the perfect weather, April Walter's not in here to counteract that, because April loves it cold, right? But I like perfect, like 74, even a little bit like 78, 79. I mean, come on, bring the heat. It's perfect, but I'll tell you what, after a while, I even get tired of that. Those of you that think that you love winter so much, which don't even, you're wrong, you don't love it as much as you think you do. If it snowed every day, you would get tired of the snow, I promise you, because we're human nature, all right? So one of the things that I decided in my heart as we're moving into this place and getting this church set up and everything here is I was not going to complain. I'm just not going to. There might be some stuff in here that is absolutely ridiculous to look at. There might be a lot of stairs in here. And oh, by the way, as I've been tracking things, my average of flights climbed is like 14 to 17 a day, all right? I haven't lost as much weight as I'm hoping for, but I'm probably eating more because, you know, I feel like I can't. 17 flights of stairs a day. You deserve another cookie, right? Yeah, get it. Well, here's the point, though, right? Here's the point. When we get into a place, we choose how to respond. If all good things come from God, and if God is leading us through these wilderness times in our lives where he says, I am doing this to humble so you trust me and test you so I can see what's in your heart, then why in the world would his children ever complain about anything? Can you imagine? God saying, guys, I've got good things for you. I've got good things for you. Even the tests are a good thing, because they bring out the areas that we need to improve on, and he's showing, he's got good things for us. Why in the world would we complain? Let's go to the next one. He humbled you, Moses tells them, causing you to hunger and then feeding you with manna. Now, I put this little question mark in there because I love this word manna. We all kind of know that it was some sort of wafer cracker that fell from the sky, blanketed everything, and every day they'd pick up enough to feed themselves for the day. What happened if they kept it overnight? It spoiled, right? Except for the Sabbath day, which the day that God said, do no work on that day. Then the day before Sabbath, he would send enough for 2 days. And they would gather that and keep that, and then the third day it would spoil, and they'd go out. They didn't know what it was. And this word manna, we don't know what it is. We have no idea. It's some kind of wafer-type, honey, vanilla flavored thing based on everything that anybody can figure out from reading God's word. They didn't know what it was. And you know what manna means? What? That's what it means. What? We don't know what it is. It fell from the heaven. We don't know what to call it. We'll just call it what? Did you get enough what today? What?
Yes.
Are you hungry? What? Anyway, so he even kind of fills us in here a little bit, which neither you or your ancestor had known. Nobody knew what man was. God just provided it for them. What? To teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. See, God wants us to know that His Word is what sustains us. That His Word is what gives us power and energy and breath and life and a job and an income and a 401k and health and sunshine and rain and the breeze. It's all from Him. There isn't anything that happens on earth that doesn't come from God. And He speaks it. He says, you're hungry, here's manna, go. And the yard's filled with manna. God's Word sustains us. His very Word sustains us. Not just the Bible words, but because God is in heaven saying, I want you to have life today. That's what sustains us. I want you to have breath today. That's what sustains you. Get it? Because sometimes I feel like, no, I got this, God. And I think that was one of my biggest frustrations in the last building was I thought I knew. I had some great ministry experience. Great ministry experience. Like, great people poured into my life over the years. Great people. And so when they hired me on here at Springs Range Church, I thought I knew how to do this. Because I'd been successful. I'd done some good stuff. Like, I got this, God. And He's like, you think so? No, you don't. I do, though. Trust me. And so, be humble and be tested. Here we go. Next one. Okay. Oops. I might not have finished. Every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. I love this. This is the kind of God that we serve, guys. Their clothes didn't wear out. Their clothes did not wear out, and your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Imagine, some of the commentators, when I read this stuff about this, said that there's speculation that kids' clothes grew with the kids. Imagine that. Here's your clothes, Jack. And then they never get short on his ankles again. All of the years that he's grown up, you know, they're all the right size forever. It would have helped me out a lot. Because every 2 days, this kid is growing. And you can see his ankles. Imagine. You're a baby, Hazel, right? Never, I mean, that outfit lasts her the rest of her life. The diapers, you know, that'd be nice if they lasted the rest of the life, too. Imagine. Anyway. Sorry. They never wore out. Their shoes never wore out. Okay, you guys got to go back with me now, because I lost it. That's the way my mind works sometimes. They never wore out. Their clothes never wore out. They never, and some of you are like, but I like the new styles. Well, there's no Cosmo in those days, so you'd be okay. The sandals were pretty much in, and that was it for the next, 40 years, and you never had to worry about it. All right. So your feet did not swell during those 40 years. Verse 5, know that in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so the Lord your God disciplines you. Man, these are tough words. Humility and humble and testing and discipline. Ouch. In the Hebrew, which this is written in, all right, in the original language, they didn't speak English like we do today. The word discipline can also have another connotation like education, right? But the point here is this, that education without discipline is incomplete, okay? Education without discipline is incomplete. Some of your kids are like, oh, come on, really? And no, it's true. Some of you parents need to hear this because education without discipline is incomplete. If you never say no and you never correct, you're not educating the way that our God educates us. Because if you've not been disciplined, the other scriptures suggest that maybe by God, if you've not been disciplined by God, the other scriptures suggest that maybe you're not one of His children. Because God disciplines His kids. Okay? It's two-sided. So chastisement's part of education. But so is encouragement. Punishment is part of educating your children. But so is playtime. You can't have one without the other. It's incomplete. And what happens in society and parenting books over the years is you'll see the pendulum swing back and forth. And pretty soon nobody's saying no to any of their children. But that's not good. And then, on the other hand, some of you have been raised by really, really strict parents that never let you do anything. They never played. They never had fun. And I'm a little bit guilty of that at times. Right, Jack? This was really convicting a few years ago when we went on vacation and I jumped in the pool. They're like, oh, look, it's vacation, Dad. I'm like, ooh. So what the heck do you get the rest of the time, you know? But see, play and having fun with your kids and encouraging your kids and supporting your kids and really jacking them up and saying, man, you're awesome, is important. And so is saying, dude, you're out of line. Your attitude's wrong. Stop doing that behavior. See, both and, guys. You can't have one without the other. Same with God. And that's what he does with us. If you only know God as a disciplining God, you don't know half of God. Amen. He loves you. He longs to play with you. He longs to create places and spaces that we can enjoy. Right? Yes. But if you only know God as he's not angry with me ever because he loves me unconditionally, and you don't understand that he says, stop misbehaving. I don't like that behavior. Then we've got the wrong view of God too. It's both and. All right, next. Observe the commands of the Lord your God, walking in obedience to him and revering him. That goes back to that discipline piece, right? If we don't know that he does have rules and he does have ways and he asks us to follow, how can you revere him? Verse 7, for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with brooks and streams and deep springs gushing out of the valleys and hills. And when I came across this in my quiet time, and then later on I shared it with Trish, I mean, we had tears in our eyes over this stuff because that last building was so frustrating. And he says he's bringing us into this place which we imagine this place. I mean, there's this fountain outside that's kind of like a brook, right? I mean, there's waters in the back. There's beautiful hill, mountain thing, and trees and animals, and it's like life here. It is unreal here. And just this building alone already brings people together here. And it's teeming with God's Spirit and with good things. And I was like, oh. Verse 8, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. A land where bread will not be scarce and you will lack nothing. A land where the rocks are iron and you can dig copper out of the hills. When you've eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. If we don't want to forget, we cannot stop praising God. Because to battle spiritual amnesia, to battle the things that God's taught us along the way, to battle against that, worship is the antidote. Next. And then he finishes up this section. He says, be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees that I'm giving you this day. Do not forget. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, when your herds and your flocks grow large, and your silver and your gold increase, and all you have is multiplied. When God just lavishes his blessings on you, when all you have is taken care of, when you lack nothing, he says, watch out. Do not forget the good that God's done, because it could be that then your heart will become proud and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt and into the land of slavery. See, part of the problem that we get into as human beings is that God loves to send blessings our way. He loves you. But then when he does, we forget where they came from, and for some reason the perils of prosperity kick in. And the perils of prosperity are things like selfishness, things like self-sufficiency, things like pride, things like entitlement, all of those things. And God says, do not let those things creep in, because I am the one that's giving you all of these blessings. I am the one that's doing all of this. Do not forget. Do not forget. Do not forget, it says. So, part of the this last building project that we did, the first one, the contractor wasn't good at his job, and he didn't really know what he was doing. That set off the whole thing the wrong way. And one of the things that he did is he had a lot of fill dirt brought into the site, and I didn't know anything about fill dirt. I'm thinking dirt is dirt, right? It's not. Fill dirt is very specific, and you've got to have a certain amount of it to do a certain thing. That Costco building that went up on whatever street that is, like Barnes and almost Powers, they had a lot of leftover fill dirt they were excavating out. So this contractor's like, yeah, we'll take it, we need it. And they dumped it on our property before the building project started. Well, by the time the building project was done, the guy called in way too much fill dirt. I mean, Costco was a lot bigger building than the one that we were building. We didn't need it all. So we wound up with a pile of fill dirt. And not just like you might get delivered in your backyard, okay? Like a $50,000 pile of fill dirt. It was going to take that much money to move the fill dirt. And we didn't have it. We spent all the money trying to build a stupid building to begin with. We didn't have that kind of money. And the city gets really frustrated when you've got a lot of fill dirt that's clogging up their stormwater drains. Because they get pressure from the federal government to make sure that stormwater is clean, and they get fined if it's not. So guess what? It flows downhill. The dirt flows right downhill. And our dirt was flowing down their hill. And they're like, stop! And they're trying to do all kinds of crazy stuff, and it was super stressful, and I had no idea